For the past 21 years, the Inspire Synergy has championed transformative leadership across Africa. This year, the Inspire Leadership Summit is themed Africa Manifest as a rallying call for us all to manifest the African dream. Save the dates from Monday 4th to Saturday 9th of August 2025 from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. East African Time daily live on Zoom. Connect with brilliant African leaders like Dr. James Magara, Professor Anand Pillai, Mrs. Dorothy Kisaka, Reverend Anthony Ashaye, Mrs. Allen Kajina, Bishop J.B. Masinde, Mr. Solomon Ikayoda, Dr. Shingi Munyeza, among many others as they ignite your potential. To register, visit our website www.inspiresynergy.org or call or send a message to 0700 554646. Inspire Synergy, igniting your potential.
So as we settle into our next session here in the main room, as we're calling it, we're going to be hosting an incredible business professional, a great leader, someone who has been positioned to become not just multi-skilled, but multi-gifted in the economic and business concepts of accounting. He's great with advertising, marketing, hospitality, tourism, and this has positioned him to be a leading serial entrepreneur across the continent, not only balancing skill, but also his experience and obviously talent. He's won numerous awards for his dedicated work toward business growth and has spent more than 3 decades at the helm of some of the biggest organizations in Zimbabwe. And he's also directed his years of experience into entrepreneurial ventures that are uplifting the national image of Zimbabwe. He's got diverse knowledge and experience, as well as expertise, as I mentioned, in finance, accounting, auditing, marketing, tourism, and hospitality. And he's been at the heart of accelerating Zimbabwe's journey toward economic rebirth, of course, with what's been happening there, but also making sure that it becomes stable as well. And he's got a wonderful entity called Vinal Investments Private Limited that he has been leading, establishing 4 well-placed subsidiaries. That one is in commodities. You've got one that is an enterprise incubator. You've got a solar company addressing the power deficit there, but also Rapid Pay, a fintech company that has created a marketplace platform with a payment gateway, online utility, and many other things, but also hospitality and tourism investments in Vinal Hospitality. He is a very strong believer in Jesus Christ, which is a very big thing these days for someone to be at his level to do. And his journey has taken him to many pastoral responsibilities with the Zimbabwe Pentecostal denomination faith ministries, including being the president of the Evangelical Fellowship of Zimbabwe and also chairman of the Zimbabwe Heads of Christian Denominations. And he's also served as one of the members of the Presidential Advisory Council and is most importantly married and has a daughter at the moment. Please give a very rousing, warm welcome to Dr. Shingi Munyeza as he joins us at Inspire Leadership Summit 2025. Dr. Shingi, you're very welcome. What an absolute delight to have you with us. And we are excited to hear what God has laid on your heart, even as we prepare to engage with you and hear from you. You're very welcome.
I want to I've got 5 slides, and I'm going to just predicate what I am going to share with you from provoke. I want to provoke. So I am not here to make all of us feel good about anything. I am going to provoke a conversation that will probably carry on a little longer than the conference itself. I hope so. So it's a provocation. It might even come across as an insult, but please understand that I'm just trying to provoke, and I'm trying to provoke as much as I can. You know, God causes an upset in us so that he sets us up. So I'm going to try and upset you enough that you will not hate me, or you will not be saying, well, I didn't like it. It was too harsh on all of us. But here we go. My first slide, I'm going to talk about the global arena has changed. The global arena has changed forever. This is not going to, there is not going to be the good old days. They're gone, finished. So we must understand that. First thing I want to talk about is that the reverence of a higher being has become optional, this making the gospel optional rather than a choice. And I'm going to expand a little bit on that. I'm just about 60. So I was saved in the mid-80s. The gospel was a choice you have to make, and there was very little choice that was there. The choice wasn't, do you want to worship God or not worship God? It was, do you want to worship this God or that God? And most of us were captured into that evangelism and that overflow of the Spirit that came into the 70s and 80s, that started in the 70s and overflowing into the 80s. And the choice was Jesus Christ of Nazareth is our author and perfecter of our faith, as our Savior and the Redeemer. But what has been posed to this generation now is that actually the issue of the gospel is optional. You can do life without God. Let me even put it further. You can do life without any God in your life. Now, that is going to make it difficult for us to do evangelism the way we used to do evangelism. We cannot continue to do crusades the way we used to do crusades. We are losing the plot with AI and everything else, holograms and things that are coming up now. You cannot continue to reach out to the lost in the same methods, formulae, in some cases, repeating the same things we did 30, 40, 50 years ago. Things have rapidly changed. We ought to change. All I am saying is that if in our churches, we're still just waiting for people to come to church, and that's the ones we are going to preach to, they are not coming to church because people are fed up of the kind of church that we've got now. People are fed up with the kind of worship services we are. The world has moved on from our religiosity of having praise and worship and then have tithes and offerings, and then the word comes and then we do an altar call and we go. That has existed for nearly 100 years. That ought to change. If it's not going to change, Gen Z, we will never get them. Our churches are of older people now, not of the younger people. Why? It's because the Gen Zs and the other younger generations have realized that this God is optional. It's not a choice I can make. No, it's optional. I can't do it. In fact, I don't have to have a God in my life. Now, we've got to find new ways of evangelizing. So that's number one. Number two, civilization has taken yet more giant steps in the global north, introducing a new form of slavery and xenophobia. Now, I want to underline the word civilization. Civilization here, I'm talking about behaving at a certain level, which is congruent to our environment and where the globe is at. Now, the global north has gone far ahead in civilization. And I want to say that the global south, where Africa is, we're still battling with medieval issues. Well, I've been battling lately, and I ask myself, why is it that when in Africa, when you're given to be in charge of something as an African, Black African, it deteriorates than improves? Why is it that? Why is it that when we're given an organization to run, sooner rather than later, it deteriorates and it shuts down? Why is it that when we have taken over schools that used to be in the pre-colonial and colonial eras and running very well, and right now they are a mess? Why is it that? Why is it that when we take over companies as Blacks, and then we do not see another generation taking over? Why is that the case? Oh, let me cut it to where it is most sincere. Why is it that when we take over our countries, They're worse off than the time during colonization. There is a civilization conversation that we must have. The way we behave around ourselves is not civilized at all, brethren. It's not. It's not consistent with the global order. The way we behave in our villages, we are sometimes savages. And we need to correct that. At some point, we need to have a very sober conversations amongst ourselves. We can blame it on everyone else. But at some point, we've got to look into the mirror and say to ourselves, this, what we do is wrong. Why is it that when we are in Europe, we behave totally different? And then when we just get to Africa, we become a mess. There is some conversation we must make. The next thing is that the disruption of global economies have left the developing economies on their back foot at best, but otherwise sliding back into recessions. This is what has happened. The disruption of global economies have now focused on their own economies. Talk about the developed world. They're not worrying about themselves. Europe is closing rank. North America, Canada, and all these other BRICS countries, they're closing rank. Where is Africa in all this? Where are we? Yes, we've got one or two of our African countries under BRICS, but even they are suffering and they are struggling in their own way. So we have been left struggling on our back foot. Yet, when you look at us, we are endowed with so much richness, wealth, underground and above ground, creativity amongst our people, rich heritage that we've got. What have we done about that? And why is it that we're always begging the North for help? Yes, the colonizers, that was wrong, that was evil, that was diabolic. But should we continue to be begging the North when we're sitting on diamonds, gold, platinum, copper, and silver? Should we be doing that? And yet, we are still backward in our communities, in our social services, in just our own culturalization and our own behaviors. Global migration is the next point I want to talk about. Global migration has caused a new global culture to emerge, resulting in the abandonment of old values and embracing fleeting values, making it difficult to build strong local communities. Now, this is one of the things that I've realized, being a pastor, being a businessman, being a family man, and belonging to community, is that when you are just building something with people, they leave. They go to Europe, they go to America, they go to Australia, they go to Asia. Then you start all over again. We're always starting afresh. Why can't we attract our best? It is because we are not developing our local communities and our local economies and local infrastructure to make sure that none of our best leave the country to go elsewhere. So global migration has destabilized the global South. Africa has been affected. We are training engineers, scientists, we are training managers, we are training experts in various fields for the rest of the world, and we are impoverished and we are still just continuously training. The increase of political hegemony through economic prowess by the ruling elite has caused democratic norms to be abandoned to ensure political survival. Now, our politics have become a mess. And that's where it has begun. And I think that's what is going to be destroying us in the short term and maybe in the long term. Our democratic norms have been abandoned completely. We nuance it with all sorts of things. We have elections, we do all sorts of things, but our democratic processes have been overtaken by political hegemony because of the economic prowess of the ruling elite to stay in power. That's all. People have now realized that you only must stay in power. Extend the term of office. Do not be kicked out through elections. Stay for as long as you want. Make sure you die on the throne. And at the same time, the economy is going downhill. The communities are going downhill. Development is suffering. The sixth thing there is that the advent of the fourth industrial revolution technologies have brought so much disruption in all societies across the board, bringing the good, the bad, and the ugly. AI, nanotechnology, all these technologies that have come and shocked all of us. Africa is still trying to do a catch-up game on it. But let me tell you, they've disrupted us. We are still in the, not even in the digital era, we are in the analog era. Our systems are still analog. You go to a police post in Africa, there is nothing. It is still manual. Everything is, you go to a hospital in Africa, everything is still in manual terms. You are not dealing with even the digital era. So we are marginalized. We're not moving forward. Why is it that Africa must manifest itself? We cannot continue to have this feel sorry for ourselves and boast about everything else except for the things that matter. Climate change has caused so much natural disasters and unpredictability on the natural environment, leading to increase in poverty levels and threatening human survival. Climate change has done more damage to Africa. Maybe less to the rest of the world, but more to Africa. Droughts, floods, which has affected our food production. We have a net import of food in Africa, yet we've got the most fertile soils globally. The biggest continent, most fertile soils, we still import food. We need a different conversation, my friends. We need to talk totally different. We cannot bring issues of let's just gloss over it, let's keep praying, let's keep talking, let's have more conferences. This is not going to be solved by conferences. This is not going to be solved even by prayer. Because prayer must be a lifestyle for all of us. But we cannot just congregate and say, let's pray for our economy. No, we got to roll our sleeves and do something about it now. We need to do something. Well, let's talk about our gospel now. Let me just go a little bit deeper into some of the issues I've just summarized. I'm going to go into our gospel, an inch deep and a mile wide. Our churches are full, yet our factories are derelict and empty. How do we justify that? We got full churches beaming to the seams. We have 10, 5, 6, 7, 3, 4 services, but yet the very thing that drives the kingdom of God and changes and disciples nation, it's in derelict form. Factories, industries, business, the marketplace is in a mess. Our churches are thriving. How is that dichotomy working? How is that reflex in our minds working? How are we reconciling to that? So much preaching of the powerful healing gospel, yet we have the highest childbirth mortality rates in the world, and medieval diseases are prevalent in our communities. How is that? How are we going to solve this problem? Are we going to wait for another 5-year development plan, another 10 years, another 20 years? And we think that the rest of the world is going to come back and save Africa. No, my friends, it's not going to do that. The world is moving without Africa now. Now with technology, you can do anything without some of the things we boast we have. We used to boast that we have diamonds. The biggest diamonds fields in the whole world were in Africa. But now we've got technology, and then there are artificial diamonds that are overtaking the ones that we have to dig from the ground. So some of the things that we used to boast we have, we're going to lose them because there's going to be replacement through technology. Fourth industrial revolution technologies are coming to overtake that. We preach a prosperity gospel whilst robbing the poor of the last means of survival. How is that? How do we live in our communities with this? How do we continue to come to church and mingle with each other, knowing that so-and-so is robbing the poor of their last means of survival by some prosperity charlatan behavior? How do we work with this? You don't find this in the global north. You don't find them. You don't find them in the global north. Why can't we combine this? That our churches are vibrant, our message is powerful, and then we are seeing prosperity and progress in our people. There are safety nets in our communities. No one is going out hungry. No one is dying at the door of a hospital or going to the hospital because there's no medication. Why is it that we still have this? Thousands are converted every Sunday in our churches, yet few are discipled to become truly devoted followers of Christ. 2 Timothy 3, verse 1 to 5. But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, and unpeaceable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. We must come to a time that we must avoid such people and deal with the ill that is in our midst. Roll up our sleeves and deal with it rather than tolerate and accommodate. I'll finish with our gospel. Our education is overrated. Friends, our education is overrated. We churn out graduates for first world economies whilst our own languish under mismanagement. We then wonder why we have massive brain drain. We train our young people to be workers and managers instead of being inventors and creators. Why has it taken so long to change our curriculum and syllabus? Why can't we have inventions coming out of Africa? People are sending people to the moon, to space, to do all sorts of things. Nothing from Africa. We're sitting there. Yes, I know what you're going to say. We are producing artists and footballers. That's good. I will not chide that. I will not put that down. That's good. But we need developmental skills now. We need those issues that would drive our economies, our communities, that they will be pointed towards Jesus, knowing that he's the author and creator of heaven and earth. Why haven't we changed our syllabus? Why is this still the same syllabus that I did 50 years ago when I was in primary school? Why do we have still the same things? Patching it here and there. Yet the global north has moved on. Have you looked at how Chinese kids are being raised nowadays? At 2 years, at 1 year? And look at our kids. They're just sitting there and waiting to eat because we have not fed them. We have destroyed the economy, the environment. We have just plundered the resources that they're supposed to enjoy. Whilst the global north is churning out engineers and scientists, we're churning out political scientists, prophets, and sangomas. That's what we are excited about. The latest sangoma, the latest prophet, the latest politician who can wow us. And now these days, they're not leaving. These politicians, they're not even allowing the younger ones to come in. They've locked the door for the young ones. Check across Africa. The average age of our presidents right now, you will be shocked, it's above 70. Average age of a president. Yes, you could say, oh, but that's the same thing as Donald Trump and the other like, and so on and so forth. But hey, my friends, we cannot use that as our plumb line when we know that these old men and women have nothing more to give. Yes, fear has overtaken us and we can't challenge them. But is there a way of having a sober conversation that we can allow better people to lead our countries, to manage our economies, to manage our communities? Is there a place like now you would say, oh, no, but this is, we cannot touch the politician. Let me tell you, the church is worse. We are all dying on the throne as well. No one is giving space to Gen Z to lead. No one is giving the young people to lead. We are all going to die on the throne. We must change this narrative and these conversations. My friends, let's change this narrative. Let's change these conversations. And I'm hoping I upset you enough that you cannot live at peace with us. We just lack critical thinking at a basic level. That's why we are comfortable with mediocrity. We have, most Africans have a rural home and a city home. When they go to the rural areas, that's when you realize that their civilization and their behavior is still at that sort of level. There is no running toilet in their rural home, yet they've got a 10-bedroom house in their city. How do you live with that behavior? How does that work through our minds? That you go into the bush when you go into the rural home where your mother or your grandmother is, and you're all hiding behind bushes. Yet when you go into town in your expensive vehicle, you are seated, you are driving into a 10-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 5-bedroom, all in suite house. How do we live with that environment? That's mediocrity. Romans 8:19, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the true sons of God. The world is waiting for the revelation of the sons of God. God is not mediocre. Friends, God is perfect. God is excellent. We must be able to at least emulate that. The scriptures exhort us to that. Let me move on to the next. Our democracy does not work for us. And I'm going to provoke us. There could be politicians in our midst. Our democracy doesn't work for us. We have imported a democracy which continues to be foreign to us. Yes, we all fought our liberations and we wanted one man, one vote, and so on. It has not worked. We can say whatever we want. We must continue to vote. I am telling you, Africa is celebrating, countries are celebrating 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 40 years, 20 years, 30 years of independence, of elections, a deteriorating environment, which means our democracy is not working. It's not producing our best. It's not producing our best. What we have managed to do with that democracy is by replacing prior colonizers and oppressors with our own liberators. The only difference is that they've done worse than the colonizers. That's the difference they've made. They've done worse. And I am not even going to say, except for this one, except across the board in Africa, we have just done worse than our colonizers. Self-fulfilling mandates, just benefiting a few and cronies. We cannot, our democracy has not worked. Elections are not the solutions in Africa. I want to provoke you to these conversations. Elections are not going to be the solutions to solving this endemic pandemic in our situation in Africa. The lack of development, the lack of progress, the lack of catching up, the lack of measuring up that we are now at this level. We cannot be pariahs, pariah states up until now, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years after independence. No, we cannot. So elections have not sorted. They've not solved the solutions in Africa. And I'm talking about the democracy we have. Now you'll be asking, so which one do you think? I don't know. We need that conversation now. But I can tell you elections are not solving the problem. We need meritocracy and benevolent leaders in our body politic. That's all we need. How we come up with that? Let's have a different conversation. Let's have a different conversation. How do we have meritocracy and benevolence? Not kakistocracy that has been there, corruption that is there. No, we want meritocracy. We want benevolent leaders in our body politics. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. My last slide. We have niched economies. Africa continues to be an exporter of raw materials and importer of food. Yet collectively, Africa is endowed with 30% of the world's mineral resources. Yet annually, we are importing no less than $60 billion of food, net import of food. And yet we have got the most fertile soils in the whole globe. How is that? When are we going to have a conversation which is not another session of pleasing this, let's start that, at a core, which is mainstreamed, top to bottom, bottom to up. Everyone is having this conversation to say, look, how can we continue in this, where we are exporting raw materials and importing food? We are weak on infrastructure and strong on consumptive behaviors. Anything that is consumptive, we are on the forefront. thank God that now the globe north is realizing aid is also a poison to the rest of the world. Now, Africa was caught napping when America said no more US aid. I know that there are victims and unforeseen victims, people on life supporting drugs and so on, who have been affected. But I would like to ask, where were our governments with all the cars, the wealth they've accumulated? Surely, maternity wards are not that expensive than the cars that they drive. Then we all drive. Forget about government, ourselves, the church, the civic society. Where are we in building support systems and safety nets that support our people at their most vulnerable point? Where are we? We have not nursed entrepreneurs and failed to create a patient capital for new startups. That's our economy. We have found in between 1 year and there entrepreneurs. We actually loathe and hate our entrepreneurs. We don't want to see them because we think, why them? We should all be workers somewhere. Yet the global north is churning out entrepreneurs to develop their economies, to come out with new technologies, to come out with new ideas. And they throw money at that. Now, you say Africa has no money. We have the money. We have the raw materials. We have the resources. We have the wealth that we've got. We cannot continue with these islands of prosperity surrounded by seas of poverty and underdevelopment. The church, as I conclude, the church has outsourced its role and confined it to church buildings, building more churches. Friends, we got to stop building more churches and invade the marketplace. Let each man, woman find a pulpit at their marketplace location. Let's devolve this whole mantra of saying we must all survive in a church building. Where our church is, we are in a constituency where each constituency must have 40,000 people, according to the voting demarcations that have been given by government. So there are at least 40,000 people there. But in our church, we are less than 1,000. If we group together the churches in that whole area, we are less than 5,000 that meet on a Sunday. Where are the other 35,000 people on a Sunday? So we got to go to where they are. Jesus didn't wait for people to come to the synagogue. He went to the highways and the byways. He created a pulpit at every marketplace opportunity. Let's devolve the pulpits out of our churches into the marketplace. This is my only clarion call for all of us. But let's have big debates, uncomfortable debates, discussions. Let's come up with ideas that start granular level and begin to say, nurse them and say, we must stop this that we are doing. This is not sustainable anymore. And with that, friends, I leave you with these thoughts, and I hope that this is a conversation we can have. I hope my aim was to provoke you. I hope I've just managed to do that. If you're upset, I am sorry. But I just hope that I managed to upset you a little bit in your thinking so that we can have some debate that is different. God bless you.